Mr. President,
Senator from Michigan.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to applaud the tremendous work that has been done over the course of this year to pass a bipartisan 5-year, $305 billion highway bill, the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, known as the FAST Act. Transportation infrastructure is an essential part of the United States economy. It serves as a foundation to support our country's economic global competitiveness and connects communities, people, and markets. Federal investment into transportation and other infrastructure has unfortunately lagged in recent decades, with public expenditures on infrastructure as a percentage of GDP steadily declining to its lowest levels in 20 years. I have consistently called for a highway bill that ensures steady and reliable funding for states so they can make the long-term plans for improving our crumbling infrastructure. For too long, stopgap measures to prop up the Highway Trust Fund for just a few months at a time have failed to provide the stability necessary to grow our economy. The FAST Act comes at a critical time. This legislation will improve our nation's infrastructure, make our federal surface transportation programs work better for states, and address our nation's infrastructure priorities by focusing on critical commerce corridors and emerging freight corridors as well. The FAST Act also makes key investments in something that I'm very passionate about, and that's the future mobility of the United States. Today, the auto industry is working hand in hand with tech, telecom, and software companies and their partners in academia and federal agencies to collaborate and contribute to the transportation system of the future. This future will be dominated by connected and autonomous vehicles, on-demand services like ride-sharing and car-sharing, and innovations in vehicle-to-infrastructure communications. Vehicle-to-infrastructure communications technologies, known as V2I, have the potential to deliver incredible safety, mobility, environmental, and operational benefits to the driving public. For example, V2I technologies will allow bridges that are icing up to be able to communicate directly with an automobile before it gets to the bridge, and as a result, will prevent an accident before it even occurs. Stakeholders today are working to develop and test V2I technologies, and widespread deployment is expected in the coming years. But we have to make sure that the states are making plans for this future and are prepared to deploy and maintain V2I technologies. That is why I introduced legislation earlier this year with Senators Stabenow and Blunt that promotes investments in vehicle-to-infrastructure technology by authorizing states to use existing surface and highway transportation funds to invest in V2I projects as they upgrade their highway infrastructure. It's called the Vehicle-to-Infrastructure Safety Technology Investment Flexibility Act of 2015, and today, I'm proud to say that that legislation was passed as part of the FAST Act. My vehicle-to-infrastructure provision and the broader bill's major investments in research and development represent the type of forward-thinking policymaking that Congress should be focused on. By committing now to help usher in the future of mobility and providing the funding and time to execute these programs, we have the ability to transform our society for the better. The FAST Act also contains several provisions to improve rail safety in the United States. I'm pleased that legislation that I authored in the wake of the devastating Amtrak number 188 crash earlier this year in Philadelphia that unfortunately took the lives of 8 people and injured over 200 was included in the FAST Act. My provision requires the Department of Transportation, Amtrak, and the National Transportation Safety Board to conduct a post-accident assessment of the Amtrak 188 crash to determine if Amtrak followed its emergency preparedness and family assistance response plans, and determine if it or how these plans can be improved in the future. Finally, the FAST Act reauthorizes the Export-Import Bank. Since the beginning of July, the jobs supported by the EXIM Bank have been unnecessarily jeopardized. The EXIM Bank helps level the playing field for American companies in a tough global market. Last year, it supported more than $27.4 billion in U.S. exports and 164,000 jobs. More than $10 billion of that total, nearly 40%, represented exports by small businesses. 90% of its overall transactions directly supported small businesses, including many that serve as suppliers for large companies. In Michigan, for example, the EXIM Bank has supported 229 exporter businesses selling $11 billion worth of goods to places like Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Canada. This support is particularly important for our manufacturing industry, and the majority of Michigan exporters using EXIM Bank are manufacturers of motor vehicles and parts, machinery and chemicals, basically the backbone of Michigan's economy. I'm proud to see that with the FAST Act's passage, we can get back to the business of doing what makes sense for the economy and for jobs in America. Mr. President, I yield the floor.